Hey everybody, it's Rick Trummer from Rick Trummer Consulting and Training. I hope you have been having a great week. We're on video 3 of the ACR tools that are inside Photoshop and the bridge. Very, very cool application, the bridge. Again, this is an absolutely free application, which I don't know why more people don't take advantage of. But we've gone over the tools in the upper left corner for the last couple days, and now we're going to be talking about some of the tools that are over here on the right side. What the first tool that I always go into right away is I normally like to set my shadow and my highlight clipping path. These are areas that I know that when I set them, I'm going to be able to know when data is being clipped from this particular image. Let's zoom in here and show you what I'm talking about. When you click on these areas, you'll notice that a little box goes around that's highlighting, telling you, a little white highlighter, which is telling you that now it's going to show you that if there's any clippings, it's going to show you. Blue is an indicator that your shadows are going out, okay? Here you'll notice right away when we did this, you see a little bit of blue in here that's telling you that the black side or the shadow side of the image is actually being clipped. Now, the other side is the white side. So let's say we took our exposure, we brought it way over here like this. You'll notice that right away you're starting to see red data being clipped. That means that your highlight data is being clipped on the other side. So for me, I like to keep this right at 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 all the way down. Now, once you have that, you want to make sure to set that as default. So whatever you want your normal tools to be, I want you to set it up just the way that you like it. And then if you click on the little down arrow here on the basic tab line, you're going to set that as your new Camera Raw default. What that'll do is every time you bring an image in, then it's going to start at that point when you bring the image in. So no matter what image you bring it in, it's going to use these parameters that you have preset. Now, for me, I have these all set up to 0. Photoshop sets these up just a little bit differently, or maybe you moved them in a different area and you didn't realize that they're going to hold that data until you clear them back out again. So I want to make sure that you're setting those up to where you want your defaults to be. If you know that you're always a little bit high on the highlight side, you want to be able to put that data over there and be able to clip it, make sure that it's getting there. All the power to you. I think that's a great way of doing things. But this area here is for you to set default so that you know that you don't have to keep coming in here making the same changes that you make every time. So if you know that you're always clipping data in the shadows or you're always clipping data in the highlight area, you're going to want to make sure to go ahead and set that. Now, the great thing about knowing what's being clipped by using these clipping targets up above is that now I know that that has to be worked on. The great thing about this is once you have your exposure set, you have all of these great controls down here. You've got your contrast control if you want to add some contrast, but down below you have your highlights and your shadows control, and then your white and your blacks. So for me, I have my shadows are a little bit out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my shadow side and I'm going to pull it until that data is now there. You'll notice that I'm right around plus 55 or just a little over a half a stop. Now, it didn't change the exposure at all. The exposure is still at 0, still dead set where it is. What I did was I moved the clipped data from the shadow side. I moved it so that it's now no longer clipped. It's a cool tool. And if you're using these clipping targets up above, it's going to make your job really, really easy. So shadow, this controls shadow. This does the same thing for the highlight side. So let's just say, for example, I brought the highlights to a point where I was clipping a little bit of data in here. Now I'm going to come to my highlight side and I can bring those down until now you'll notice I came down all the way and I still have a little bit of red data here. This is telling me there's still stuff there. Now I can go to my secondary source, which is my whites, and I can continue pulling data down to be able to take that out. So I have kind of a primary, which is my highlights, and my secondary, which is my, my white channel. Same thing goes for the shadow side. Shadows first, then my blacks. So that's how these sliders kind of work. Let's go ahead and put all of these back to where I like them, which is 0. So we're going to put that highlights back there at 0. Now, if you're somebody who wants to be able to have maybe your highlights moved a little bit, you can certainly, from this exposure, you can certainly take your highlights and bring your highlights. Although I don't know why anybody would want to do that, trying to blow out highlight data, but if for some reason you thought that your highlights needed to be brought up a little bit, you can control those by just using this real quick tab inside the menu system. So not only can you use them to target data that's being clipped, but you can also use them to target information that maybe you want a little bit brighter or a little bit darker. It really depends on you. We've already shown you how to use these tools up here, and that's certainly another way to be able to do that. So your basic tab here runs everything that you need for basic exposure. You've got your temperature and your tint, you got your exposure and your contrast area, your highlights and shadows, and your whites and blacks. Down below here, you have 3 different buttons. One of them, the first one is called clarity. Now, a lot of people will use that as a sharpening filter. This is not a great place to use your sharpening filter. So a lot of people will go, well, I really want that image tack sharp. So what they'll do is they'll grab this and they'll yank it all the way to the right. And you'll notice that it brings things really, really sharp. The problem is haloing starts to appear. And you can't do anything about it. You can't erase it. So if you're going to be sharpening your object, my recommendation is to sharpen it in Photoshop. And then that way you can control the sharpening that's going on a lot better. And you can remove it from some areas that you don't need it and some areas that you do. This is not an area that you should be using to soften your image down, because you'll notice how everything gets very, very uncontrasty or muddy when you start doing that. Again, that's something that you should be doing inside your retouching area once you do that. Your vibrance, you'll notice that vibrance is something that works a little bit slower. It kind of works on a secondary scale, where saturation will use your primary. So if you want to do things that are a little less movement than saturation, use your vibrance scale. It'll move a little bit slower, as opposed to the saturation scale, which go much quicker. So again, you've got your kind of primary with your saturation, and your vibrance is kind of second. So that's kind of highlighting all the different tools that are inside the basic tab. And what we're going to be doing is finishing up all of the different tabs in the coming weeks. So I hope you've enjoyed this series of ACR, the Adobe Camera Raw series. Next week, we're going to be coming back with Lightroom. Again, I'm Rick Trummer from Rick Trummer Consulting and Training. I hope you're enjoying this next series that we've got for you. Remember, you can always go to our website, ricktrummer.com, to be able to purchase extensive training on all types of things, including all of the different workflows that we can go through that we're learning here on our site. Until tomorrow, thanks again for joining in.